Hi, Roy here, and welcome again to another edition of the Right Has Left podcast. I am your host, Roy Garden, and we have got a lot of late-breaking news, so let's go ahead and get into it. And one of those late-breaking news stories that just happened yesterday is a wonderful ruling from the Supreme Court. Of all people and of all the things that are in the place in our beautiful government, the Supreme Court finally woke up and realized that Donald Trump was violating the Constitution. He didn't like that. In fact, he called three of the Supreme Court members unruly because they don't know the Constitution, even though they're Supreme Court judges. And Donald Trump, he knows the Constitution. And he's mad because they didn't bow down to him. So finally, the Supreme Court ruled yesterday, on Friday, I taped these on Saturday, that President Donald Trump does not have the legal authority to impose sweeping global tariffs without congressional approval, upending one of his key policies and issuing a very rare constraint on his attempts to expand presidential powers. Now, the 6-3 decision concerned tariffs imposed under emergency powers law, including reciprocal tariffs that Trump levied on nearly every other country. Now, it was a rare setback for the administration from a Supreme Court with a 6-3 conservative majority that has regularly backed Trump on various contentious cases since he took office. Now, the ruling was written by Chief Justice John Roberts, who was joined by two of his fellow conservatives, Justice Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, and the three liberal justices, of course. Conservative justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh dissented. Of course they would. The framers did not vest any part of the taxing powers in the executive branch, Roberts wrote. The majority did not address whether companies could get refunded for the billions they have since collectively paid in tariffs. Trump committed to sending $2,000 tariff rebates, the White House says, to us, the American people. That never happened, did it? No, of course not. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Now, since I've got so much to cover, I'm not going to just elaborate on all this. But here's what Donald Trump did. As soon as that was made law that he was in violation of those tariffs, what does he do? He went ahead and did another executive order and put 10% tariffs worldwide on all countries that do business with the United States. He wants to win one way or another. But what gets me about all of this is how he has the audacity to say that the Supreme Court is not following the Constitution, like he is a federal judge. I don't think Donald Trump knows jack about the Constitution from what we have been seeing from this administration. But for him to condemn those three Supreme Court justices and that they were not following his directive, like he's in charge of the Supreme Court as well, that's going to be interesting to see. Now, what's going to happen in the future is those three judges are now pissed off and will continue to rule against Donald Trump, or they will fall in line because he typically threatens people who do not, do what he says at his beck and call. So we will have to wait and see. But it's just nice to see finally the Supreme Court, finally interprets the Constitution like they're supposed to be doing. But we'll have to see. Anyway, another top story that I want to follow here, because this is going to, probably an instance of what England is doing here is will the United States follow suit? And of course, we all are aware of the fact that Andrew Windsor, basically known as Prince Andrew, the former British prince, who was stripped of his royal titles because of his links to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, was arrested. And of course, he was released hours later, but he was arrested Thursday on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Now, while Andrew has consistently denied any wrongdoing in connection with his friendship with Epstein, concerns about the Windsor's links to the late financier have dodged and dogged the royal family for more than a decade, but the arrest of a brother of a monarch was an extraordinary development with no precedent in motion in modern times that will no doubt put more pressure on the crown. Now, after the arrest, King Charles III said that the law must take its course in the investigation, and he sought to distance his royal family from the Windsor Thames Valley where he resides. Now, police did say that a man in his 60s from Norfolk in eastern England was arrested and remained in custody. Of course, what I'm saying here is they kind of downplayed it, and because of his arrest, of course, we need to know what is this going to do for the rest of the world. Now, if England can fall in line and start prosecuting people that have had ties to Jeffrey Epstein, we in the United States, of course, we are the good old boys network here, and money talks, BS walks. So, the wealthy here typically go untouched unless they can find something of value that they have no other recourse but to go ahead and do prosecutions. Now, so far, even though there's still 3 million more files to go through on these Epstein files, and Pam Bondi has said already that the case is closed. We've done our job. There's nothing to see here. So we don't know. But it's kind of interesting how England follows course and does this. Now, the drawback on this, the way the law works in England, it may take years before they come up with more evidence or enough evidence to proceed further with Prince Andrew and do any prosecution. This is what they were saying on the news over in England. Things move a little bit slower over there than they do here in the United States. But the bottom line is that he was arrested, and that is kind of shocking news when you see things like that. But we will continue to follow on this podcast what will happen. But like I said, the things are kind of stalemated now. It's just shocking that they would arrest the prince like this. But like I said, things move slow there. It may be 6 months, it may be several years before we know any further about exactly what they have uncovered and what evidence they have against the prince. But you don't see that here in the U.S., do you? I mean, few people in high-profile positions have had any ties with Epstein, typically just resign, and the news goes away. And, of course, Pam Bondi being there to protect President Trump, even though they continue to say he has done nothing wrong, which is, to this point, is probably true from what we know, although there is evidence to say otherwise. We don't have anything to prosecute. So, and not only Donald Trump, but other people who have had high-profile ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Some other news, and that is kind of raising an eyebrow, is a federal judge on Wednesday vacated an immigration court ruling giving the Trump administration broad powers to detain migrants, forcing them to give bond hearings and then possibly release thousands in custody. That's good news because all of these migrants that have been arrested and the so-called illegal immigrants have never even had their just day in court. They weren't able to post bond or do anything. They just arrested them and haul them off. That's a violation of the Constitution. They have the same rights to have their day in court like anybody else. The federal judge has said so. Now, the ruling came from U.S. District Court Judge Sunshine Sykes, who extricated the Trump administration claims that it is targeting the worst of the worst for deportation. See, that's their whole excuse. And the MAGA Republicans who are in Congress, follow suit with that. They're arresting the worst and the worst. So people have expired green cards. They're the worst of the worst. Those migrants have had absolutely zero, I say zero, any type of crimes against them, other than maybe their green card expired or their visas expired. They're terrible criminals. They have killed, raped, and murdered and done drugs, and they need to get out of here. Those are the worst of the worst. As I have said many times here on the podcast, and it is written in stone, these ICE agents are under a rule to arrest 3,000 people a day. And when you have those kind of orders, you just arrest anybody and anything that walks, talks, or chews gum or has brown skin. And that's what's going on. And this judge has finally woke up and said, you're not arresting the worst of the worst. You are arresting anybody and anything. And that is wrong. Plus, you're not giving them the chance to post bond or have their day in court. You just pick them up and ship them out. That is illegal. That is against the Constitution. So the Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement are at times relying on very shaky legal grounds to detain migrants, wrote Sykes, and migrants are therefore entitled to a bond hearing to determine whether they may pursue their immigration case outside of ICE detention. Worst of the worst is an inaccurate description of most of these affected by DHS and ICE operations. Good for you, Judge. Perhaps in utilizing this extreme language, DHS seeks to justify the magnitude and scope of its operations against non-criminal non-citizens. Maybe that phrase merely mirrors the severity of ill-natured conduct by the government. Even though these press releases might contain an inkling of truth, they ignore a greater, more dire reality, she wrote. It is not the worst of the worst, and they are swept into the nationwide and reckless violations of laws by the executive branch, she said, pointing to the case of E.M. Ramos, you remember that, who was detained without a valid warrant with his father, that little child. The decision comes after Sykes determined in December the wide-ranging detention programs was illegal, but determined those being held merited greater relief from the court. Now, see, this is the whole thing here, ladies and gentlemen. What she has just stated there is what I have been saying since I started these podcasts. The ICE agents, who have, some of them don't even have a high school education, they are given a badge and a gun, and they're told to go out there and pick up people with brown skin, and you need to pick up 3,000 people a day. You need to get them out of here. And of course, as you know, Donald Trump's now going after the birthright thing, which, again, the Supreme Court's got to decide on that. And that's his next thing. This whole thing is Project 2025 right down to the T, and he knows it. Everybody else knows it, and that's their agenda. White privilege, white folks make lots of money. That's all we want here in the U.S. We don't want anybody else, okay? And again, a lot of these people have done nothing wrong. They've been here for 20, 30 years. They pay taxes like everybody else, and yet, you know, because of who they are, they want to get them out of here. So this judge, you know, kudos to her. And again, even though presently the Democrats have the budget froze because they want these ICE agents to get rid of those scarfs and because they're chicken, and we got to protect our families, you know. Well, what about the people that they're arresting and their families? They don't count, though, do they? And, you know, they want to start wearing body cameras. We can't wear body cameras because everything we're doing is illegal. Nobody needs to know what we're doing. And so you got to give the Democrats some pride here for doing it. But since, you know, ICE agents continue to still be out there, so this is a bad thing, is they're not getting, you know, even though they're trying to freeze the funding for them, this agency already has so many billions and billions of dollars to continue operation, it doesn't matter to them. And why do they have all this money? Because of the Trump's big so-called beautiful bill. They took all the money from Medicare and Medicaid, from the Department of Education. They just stripped everybody else and put all that money into the Department of Homeland Security so they can continue these operations. And now they want to build hundreds of more detention centers, which have absolutely zero facilities to put all these people in. We've already had a senator go into one of these detention facilities and seen the filth and the dirt and the uncaring of these people. There are 60 in a cell with one bathroom, and they are getting no medical treatment. There are diseases going on in there. It's just like Nazi Germany of 1939, where the Jews were all rounded up. That's what we're doing here in the U.S. There's one in Orlando, a huge warehouse that they're presently looking at. It's been on the news here locally that they're trying to open up another detention center. We are creating prison camps here in the U.S. This ought to scare the bejesus out of you folks. And if it doesn't, there's something wrong with you, because this is becoming absolutely serious. And I think things are finally starting to come to light, as you see with the elections that are turning around. And I think the Republicans are finally getting nervous that, you know, too much is going on, and some of the stuff needs to start slowing down and become more of a case-by-case basis. And some of these Republicans may be in trouble during the midterms, okay? So think about that. You really do. Now, as we know, the State of the Union address is coming up, and the Democrats are plotting a range of moves to broadcast their defiance of President Trump during the State of the Union address to Congress next week, the 24th of this month. Trump's speech marks a significant flashpoint amid a Department of Homeland Security shutdown, with the White House and Democrats locked in an impasse over reforms to immigration and customs enforcement, as I just told all of you. Now, while some Democrats are making a quieter stand by skipping the high-profile event altogether, others are prepared to walk out mid-speech and bring guests to underscore their arguments about the real-world impact of Trump's policies. What I wonder is if the guy will be able to, be awake when he does this. I got some pictures to show you. Trump he continues to fall asleep, folks. He does. And I don't care what Caroline Leavitt tries to do on the play on that. The videos don't lie. But I wonder if Trump will be able to get through the entire speech without, losing his train of thought on the teleprompters. And anyway, so I guess what we got to find out here is the only question for me is which of his disgusting lines prompts me to get up and leave, because at some point I will, says Representative Jared Huffman. All these Democrats have said things that, what State of the Union do we have here? There is no State of the Union in a lot of these Democrats' opinions. So, and because Trump's economic policies so far have failed, and that's really the bottom line. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here with his State of the Union speech. And other news, too, Wes Moore, who from Maryland, is accusing President Trump of lying about his Potomac sewage spill after the White House criticized him and some other regional officials for handling the disaster. As you're well aware of, in Maryland, they had a huge sewage spill due to some infrastructure problems. And of course, Trump's, he refused to do anything about helping them, but he says, if you're nice to me, maybe I will. I mean, this guy has got an ego so huge. I've never met a president whose ego is just out there, and he thinks he's, God's gift to politics. And this authoritarian government that he has created here in the U.S. is scary. And of course, Trump was blaming all the people in Maryland for the problems with the sewage. And he said that a pipe broke, known as the Potomac Interceptor, is on federal land, and that the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, which Trump just stripped most of their powers from, was invited to a hearing with updates from Maryland and D.C. Water and did not show up, and that Maryland officials were on site within hours of the leak to help coordinate the response and protect the public. The Post is the latest in a series of barbs between Donald Trump and Moore over the last several days related to the spill of 243 million gallons of sewage into the Potomac River. Now, on Monday, Trump wrote on social media there was a massive ecological disaster unfolding, and he blamed the gross mismanagement of local Democratic leaders, particularly Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. Again, you can see all this stuff when Trump gets on Truth Social. It's everybody else's fault except for him. And again, because of everything being federal land around there, the EPA was supposed to be taking care of this, and he wanted the states to take care of it. Because when you're surrounded by Democratic states, Trump does not give a crap what happens. Even though it's federal stuff, he expects the states to take care of it. And so therefore, even things with like this, as you're well aware of, the greenhouse effect and all that is now a hoax, and he has stopped the EPA from even enforcing any of that stuff. And this is the direction we're going. It's all about money. Destroy planet Earth, do whatever you can, as long as you make millions of dollars. That's all that's important, is that you make billions of dollars, ladies and gentlemen, and because money talks, BS walks. To hell with everything else. As long as you're rich, you're a good old boy. So, again, the Trump administration is also closer to a major war in the Middle East, as you're well aware of, than most Americans realize. We have, if you don't understand this by now, and you must have been under a rock, we are extremely close to going to war against Iran. And as you know, Donald Trump, when he was elected, he was going to fix the economy and keep us out of wars. How fast did that change on you, ladies and gentlemen? And a lot of his MAGA base are now not supporting him because of that. He promised peace, prosperity, millions of dollars in everybody's pockets, and turned the economy around, and that has not happened. And, of course, we now have the Department of War, not the Department of Defense. The U.S. is not defending anybody. We are going to war against everybody. That's what we're doing. And I can guarantee you, if we go to war against Iran and they close that canal and oil doesn't get through, are you ready to start paying $5 a gallon for oil, folks? Yeah, you already seen oil prices have jumped 20 cents a gallon since even the word had come out that we may be doing some military actions against Iran. And now, why does this matter? Well, a U.S. military operation in Iran would likely be a massive weeks-long campaign that would look more like full-fledged war than last month's little pinpoint operation in Venezuela. The sources noted it would likely be a joint U.S.-Israeli campaign. I can't talk. Yeah, just let me pause right there. Israel is behind all this. They control the U.S. anymore. It's not us being partners with Israel. Israel is now pulling the United States strings. If you can't see that, then again, you need to do your homework. Critical thinking skills. All right. So, and again, this thing would probably last possibly weeks. If this is because, Iran is much bigger than Venezuela as far as land mass, and they've got a lot more oil than Venezuela does. And of course, Trump is blaming on this that he wants Iran to de-escalate their nuclear campaign and stop making uranium-related war products. I thought we already took care of that, but apparently not. And, of course, such a war would have a dramatic influence on the entire region and major implications for the remaining 3 years of the Trump presidency. With the attention of Congress and the public otherwise occupied, there's little public debate about what could be the most consequential U.S. military innovation in the Middle East, at least a decade. So Trump came close to striking Iran in early January over the killing of thousands of protesters by the regime. But when the window of opportunity passed, the administration shifted to a two-track approach. Nuclear talks paired with a massive military buildup. By delaying and bringing so much force to bear, Trump has raised expectations of what an operation would look like if a deal cannot be reached. And right now, a deal does not look likely. So, and he's got his Jared Kushner over there and Steve Witkoff. They met with the Iran foreign ministers and for 3 hours in Geneva on Tuesday. Nothing happened. They had talks, but then they kept saying, publicly progress was being made, which was BS. There wasn't any progress being made. So you have to understand that this is a pretty extremely, can be dangerous. All right. So you've got to take pause on this and see what's going to happen. The bottom line is if Iran gets mad enough and they close down that very narrow, the Straits of Hormuz, and tankers can't get through there because it's not only Iran, but, the UAE and everybody uses that canal to get oil through. If they and they own that, Iran does. So if they block that and oil does not get through, then your oil prices immediately are going to shoot up dramatically. And of course, that affects everybody, and everybody usually keeps their mouth shut and says okay until it starts hitting them. When things happen in my backyard, then they start speaking up. And of course, that is the price of gasoline. And you may see prices that you have not seen since the 1970s and 80s if that canal gets shut down. So, Iran has a little bit of a pull on their side too. And we've got all of our ships over there now in the Mediterranean, and Trump's getting ready to do something. And the guy that you said would keep us out of wars and things like that, there you go. I hope not. I really don't. I mean, there is nothing that I want to see worse than things like this happening. And wars don't help anybody. It really doesn't. So now, in other wonderful news from this guy, Donald J. Trump. He has branded two of his greatest nemesis as an embarrassment to the nation after they criticized his administration during separate appearances at the Munich Security Conference. And I'm sure that you know who I'm talking about here. I'm talking about, of course, Governor Newsom of California and AOC. And both of them, as you know, gave separate speeches at their conferences. And when he was on Air Force One, he said they were an embarrassment to the U.S. and they're terrible. And he labeled them as incompetent, and he accused of them of not knowing anything and everything. And Newsom, of course, accused the president of ushering in an age of authoritarianism during his remark at the event, which he has. And strained ties between the U.S. and Europe took center stage with the Munich Security Conference over this past weekend as Trump forces on both sides of the transatlantic tried to paint a more brighter picture. And you know, there was some good things that came out of this, but the things that came out that was, of course, the press picked up on was not so much Newsom, but AOC herself. And she had a few gaffes, and we all know that. And she got the hemisphere wrong about which side Venezuela was on, and she kind of stuttered and stammered when the press asked her about the military ties with Taiwan, and she got a little confused there. And she spoke with multiple panels, and she also got some good points, but everybody kind of picked up on her that the 36-year-old congresswoman who's trying to maybe build up her agenda and her credentials a little bit for a possible run in 2028 for the White House or perhaps the Senate, they said that she screwed up, and she admitted it. All right, she honed up that she got some things wrong, but overall her point was brought up, and she got some things across. Now, the reason I'm kind of making a big deal out of all this is the fact of the matter is other politicians have screwed up as well. Look at Donald Trump. He's called Iceland Greenland and Greenland Iceland, and he can't get names out half the time. He stutters and stammers himself. Well, people say, well, that's because he's older. AOC, she's young. She knows all this stuff. And, well, again, nobody's perfect. And for the press to tear her apart like they did, while some of the criticism was justified, and she does, yes, need to do her homework. She's young, and she needs to, build up her foreign affairs credentials, perhaps a little bit better. But again, and she was nervous, and she admitted it. She says it was a huge audience, a big stage, and yes, I screwed up, and I'll do better next time. At least she admitted it. Other politicians don't. They just go on and tell you to go screw off and don't talk to me like that. I'm a state senator. Or I'm a congressperson. AOC said, yeah, I messed up, But she said overall, it was well received, and people knew what I was talking about. All right, so. And of course, Trump, condemned her because he's a Republican and she's a Democrat. So therefore, I'm great and you're not. Even though Trump, there's even pictures of him. He fell asleep half the time at those events, and it's crazy. With her defending, at least what she did wrong, that's a good thing. And she said her remarks were met with approval by Europeans and critics while they were attempting to distract from the actual substance of her message. She says, I did make some gaffes, and she says, but overall, people understood what I was saying, and I will do better next time. And I take, I own what I did. And she says, I made some gaffes, but she says, I got back on my feet and I did okay. And that's a good thing. When people hone up to their mistakes and say, I did what I did, and she says, I still have some things to learn, but she says my point got across. That's good. Most politicians don't even do that. They try to cover it up or gaslight people and make them the ones that are the bad people. And, you just didn't understand what I was saying. And I have to give AOC some credit for that, because she knew how to come around and turn things around and do what was right. And so, now another thing has been going on here that is kind of also making the news is this Board of Peace. Now, this thing, I'm going to flat out say it. It's a joke. All right. Donald Trump created it. Donald Trump runs it. Again, Donald Trump was photographed asleep at through half of this. And this, again, is just another money-making machine because he doesn't like what the UN is doing. And this is why this was created by Trump. And he's got his cronies on there who have to put money into this thing. And it's just like the oil in Venezuela. Trump's got offshore accounts that he has created where all this money is going, and he said he'll distribute it as he sees fit back to the Venezuelan people and or the oil companies that are now trying to turn the infrastructure around. Again, there's no checks and balances. He says that, but nobody is there to fact check it and see what he's actually doing with the money, because he cuts out Congress. Congress is there in this administration for one thing and one thing only: to sign off on anything and everything that he wants to do. All right, especially the Republicans. So if the Democrats get the Congress back at midterms, he is going to be in a world of hurt, because right now he's just got yes people there who are kissing his hind end and signing off on anything and everything he wants to do. The same goes with this Board of Peace. It's a joke. It's another money-making machine. It's supposed to be helping the people in Gaza and to turn around the infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. Well, they just want to turn it around for their own benefit, for money for themselves. Again, Trump and his family's got their fingers all over this thing, and especially when he is the one in charge. He wants to build hotels and stuff and maybe use the people in Gaza, the Palestinians, for his labor force and, make it another Trump world. So anyway, dozens of world leaders were gathered there in Washington, where President Trump will host his first Board of Peace meeting, which happened this past Thursday. The board, which was launched by Trump last month, as I said, aims to oversee the rehabilitation of the Gaza Strip amid a fragile Israeli-Hamas ceasefire. And the whole thing hinges on Hamas laying down their arms for good and surrendering and walking away. Now, several countries, including many U.S. allies, declined, no surprise there, to participate over concerns of the board's framework, as well as member countries, including Russia and Belarus. Members that are there, though, include Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Israel. Speaking of Qatar, did you hear this, too? Trump's gift, his jet that Qatar gave him as a gift, which is, again, totally illegal, and nobody's done anything about it, is going to be the new Air Force One, and is supposed to be ready to fly this summer. Now, this jet, although it's aged, of course, the present two jet aircraft that they have from Boeing for Air Force One, they're due to be, taken out of service for retrofitting, and they're due for a refurbishment and complete checkout. Well, then he'll be using this new jet, which is being painted in Trump's new colors, which is a darker blue, red, white, and blue. And again, this jet is not even an American aircraft. I mean, it might have been made in America, but it's a gift, and you're not supposed to be doing that. But again, nobody said anything. Another thing that's interesting about who is a member of this Board of Peace is Cambodia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Vietnam Communist Party is a member of this board. So it's just kind of interesting about what this Board of Peace is actually going to be doing for the Gaza Strip. Now, on Capitol Hill, Department of Homeland Security funding negotiations have made no headway. As I just said, we are continuing into a partial government shutdown. And, of course, the Republicans are blaming the Democrats, and Democrats are blaming the Republicans because all they're asking them to do is to put body cameras on and make sure that the facial coverings for these DHS agents are removed and they take more accountability, and it's not happening. All right. So, again, we'll have to see how far along we can go with that to get things done in the White House and as far as with Congress to get our funding back. I know a lot of people are upset about the funding. But I can, again, appreciate what the Democrats are trying to do is give some checks and balances to ICE, and it's not happening. Another thing that's in the news, it's that on a local level is what's going on here in Florida. The first thing that's going on here in Florida, of course, I originate this podcast from Florida, is Pete Hegseth and his rant about now what's going on with our colleges and universities as far as their military programs. And Florida Tech, which is just up the road from me, is one of them. And he is very upset that Florida's military program is not following his new rules and regulations about falling in line with diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI. And he has targeted Florida Tech, which is an extremely important and very prominent technical college with people from all over the world that come there to get their education, is being targeted. Now, Florida Tech works very closely with our Space Force, with Harris, and with the Air Force Base that's here in just off the coast, and with NASA. And he is targeting them because they're not falling in line, so therefore federal funding should be cut. And again, the good old Pete, buy me a drink, Hegseth. He's always off shooting his mouth off and trying to make sure that everybody falls in line, is just like Trump does. And so he's up in arms about them as well. The other thing that's going on here in Florida as well is, and you may have seen this in the news, is Randy Fine. House Democrats are discussing a forced vote to censure Randy Fine. He is a Republican. He's just up the road again from here in Melbourne and Brevard County. And of course, if Mike Johnson doesn't take actions, they said they will. Now, Fine's recent comments on social media saying the choice between dogs and Muslims is not a difficult one. Having drawn the line, if I had to make a choice, you'd take a dog. And it's gotten extreme intense backlash from colleagues, including fellow House Republicans. Yes, they're falling in line as well about that. Now, while the increasingly irreverent and partisan use of censure in recent years has frustrated many lawmakers, some progressives say this is a rare case where the use of the tool is actually genuinely warranted. And one Republican said, I hate usually to do censure resolutions against members, but I've never seen such someone deserve one more than Randy Fine, said Mark Pocan, who's a Democrat. Again, the censorship, I think, was actually passed against this guy. And I've actually met Randy Fine several times when I used to actually live up the road in Melbourne, the Palm Bay area. And this guy is so full of himself and walks around very pompous, just like other people that we know in the White House, and thinks that he's untouchable and he can say what he wants. And he's actually got some redneck supporters that just love that. They love the way he talks and how cool he is when he shoots his mouth off like that. But I agree, this is going too far. Again, it's hateful, racist speech. People have the right to be whatever religion they so desire to be. And, he needs to keep his mouth shut. So, again, Randy Fine is finding himself in trouble, like a lot of Floridians who are in public office here. They all think they're God's gift to heaven, and they're all pompous and full of themselves. And, not all the politicians are, but, a few of them are. So, you got to take it, I guess, with a grain of salt. And between, Randy Fine and Pete Hegseth saying that Florida Tech is a school that's going to lose their money because they're not falling in line with DEI is another example of crap that's, going on. And it comes all the way back to here in the state of Florida. And as I wrap up this podcast, let's all do it with a humorous note. Based on tremendous interest shown, Trump said on Truth Social, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, and also unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and any other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. God bless America. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt later described Trump's announcement as out-of-this-world news in a post on social platform. Again, it's distraction, 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 distraction. Please, folks, change the subject, move on, anything about the Epstein files. And if I'm going to have a war in Iran, if I'm going to talk about UFOs to cover Barack Obama's hind end because he said stuff that was classified, which he didn't, but that's what Trump said he said, in distraction, please, anything but the Epstein files. So, so we're going to talk about UFOs and see where they go. And, hey, if there is anything about UFOs and the government's covering up, by golly, let's have it. I'm for it. Let's do it. But I don't know how much stuff that Donald Trump can actually uncover and give us that hasn't been out there already. I mean, if we got little green men that are sitting around in, area hidden away and are still alive, or if we have alien aircraft, and let's let the American people see it. But I don't think they're going to be able to. Really don't. All right, folks, that's my podcast for this week on The Right Has Left. I hope you've enjoyed it. I do look forward to your comments, and let's pray we don't get in a heated, long-standing war with Iran. Okay, that could have dire consequences for the economic well-being of everybody in the world, including here in the United States. Until then, you try to have a good week. Take care.